is from the Stanford Sailing team, and this coach was like definitely one of the best coaches in the division. So I always like to ask him questions whenever I could. And his YouTube channel is full of a bunch of FJ and 420 videos. So it's a little different from a JY. It's kind of like subtract maybe 8 knots, and that's, you know, if you're sailing a JY in 10 knots, then you got to be in at 420 and 18 knots. That's kind of what it's like. So it's a much smaller amount of sail area in this boat, but it's pretty similar in terms of how the crew moves. And these guys are just really, really good. What they're doing right now is a bunch of roll tacks in such light wind that you can't even tell where it's coming from. So their boat speed is faster than the actual wind speed right now. So basically what they're doing, like just looking from before the maneuver, they're steering the boat into the wind really gradually. When you're in this little wind, if you steer harshly, you're going to lose flow around the blades. And you're going to slow down a lot. And the other thing is, and this is kind of funny, when you're in really light wind, you actually want to tack as slowly as possible, because you can gain upwind distance doing an extremely slow tack, because there's so little wind to slow you down that you can actually sail directly upwind for up to a few seconds. So if you watch their tiller movement, it's really, really slow. The boat, like, it's taking forever to go through the maneuver. Now, once that jib backwinds, then they know they're at their position. So skipper's going all the way butt in the water. Oh, let's follow my whole thing before. So we're going to look at what the boat's doing first. Then we'll get through. So the boat is steering through to the point where the sail's backwind, and then rolling dramatically to the skipper side, to the point where the water is just about going into the boat, or maybe going into the boat, staying there for a second, and then switching. So is it good? Yes, they're coming out of the maneuver faster than they're going into it, which is fantastic for a roll tack. The boat is not spending a lot of time through the maneuver, and the time that it is spending the maneuver is actually gaining. So that's great as well. So this is a really good maneuver. So let's look at what the large movements of the crew and skipper are before we get into the full choreography. Let's see, do we have a few more? Good. I'm gonna have to restart this video. So I'm restarting it, since everyone, just give everyone a chance. I'm restarting it right now. Okay, so the skipper is starting kind of sitting in the boat, like kneeled over the center, and the crew's starting center, almost leeward side, to keep the boat from heeling into the wind, which would really screw up flow on the sails. The skipper starts to move even more into the boat to load up so that they can jump to the outside of the boat. Then once the sail backwinds, you can see the shoulders moving into the boat. Once the sail's backwind, crew jumps across. The crew's actually calling it on this because this is a really good crew. So the crew's calling the timing on this one. And once the crew starts to move, the skipper throws their butt over the rail and rotates the knees forwards. The crew, meanwhile, throws shoulder and maybe part of their head into the water. They've got both sheets in their hands so that they can make that transition move as they cross. And then they are waiting for the boat to be pretty much to that point where they're like, you can feel it if you're the skipper, the crew. If you're the skipper, you feel it because your butt is all the way in the water. And if you're the crew, you feel it because a good part of your shoulder's in the water. The knees are rotated, so you jump across as the skipper. One hand on the tank that you're sitting on to push yourself across. The tiller hand reaches across to the high side of the boat and pulls you up the boat. Now the crew does something super cool here. They help with the flatten, but if the crew were to stay there, you'd over flatten and you would lose all that roll tack that you just got. So the crew is going to go flatten and then come back and anti-flatten. And what that does is that keeps the boat from over flattening. And yeah, one last thing that you can see in terms of sail trim that the crew's doing is that they aren't trimming the sail in all the way. They're trimming it maybe 3/4 of the way because you have relative wind while you're flattening, since there's so little wind. Then once the boat's moving again, they trim all the way. So if you're going to go out and practice, what you could do as a skipper is look through that that sequence of movements from leaning into the boat, rotating the knees forward, moving butt out as the crew comes across, and then waiting until you're significantly in the water, reaching across with a tiller hand, pulling yourself up, maybe leaning out a bit, and then moving back in the boat. As the crew, what you're looking for is that same timing, but both sheets, one sheet in each hand, throw your shoulder in the water, then come back to flatten, and then come all the way back to the side you just threw your shoulder in the water into anti-flatten. So that would be an example of a movement, which is a really high level movement that roll tack, how you could go through and analyze that and go out and come up with a plan to practice that. This is like the lightest roll tack you can do. This is like 0 knots. So as the wind speed goes up, everything that you have to do to roll the boat goes down, and everything you have to do to flatten the boat goes up. So the crew doing the anti-flatten, that doesn't happen anymore after maybe like 5 knots in the JY. After 10 knots, like all you really need to do, because both skipper and crew will be on the windward side, is just sit there like a second too late. The boat will roll, and then you'll jump across and flatten as hard as you can. Once you're at 15 knots, you still want to do a little roll tack because it helps you through the steering. But I mean like a little, like you see the jib backwind, you wait like a second and then you jump across. And that will just help you. You'll have a high side to jump across to. Like one of the things that's the least comfortable in sailing is sitting on the low side of the boat as the skipper. So by waiting a second, you get the boat to have a high side for you ready that you can jump across to. But you're not doing it to propel yourself once you're past maybe 10 knots or so.